Hello everybody, my name is Greg, some of you all know me by Speed Freak, and welcome to another episode from Shogun Auto House, where today we are going to review Malaysia's top non-national best-selling MPV, the Mitsubishi Xpander. Let's take on a trip and see just how expanded the Xpander really is. Some of y'all might be wondering, what exactly is the Xpander? Is it an MPV? An SUV maybe? Or maybe a little bit of both? We have the answer to that. This is in fact an MPV. It is a B-segment MPV to be specific. Their direct competitor being the Perodua Arus and the Honda BR-V, because the common similarity between these three is that all of them are 7-seaters. Now, back in 2017 was when the Xpander was launched, but not in Malaysian markets yet. Back then it was in Indonesia. In 2020, that was when it made its way to Malaysian markets, and from the get-go it was a tremendous hit, which is why it has remained as Malaysia's top-selling non-national MPV. Alright, so as always, we're going to kick things off with the front design of the car. Now, the first thing that's going to hit you is, well, the strange design on the front bumper. This is actually known as the dynamic shield. Mitsubishi introduced this with the Triton Athlete a few years back, and since then more of their newer models, including this of course, has been presented with the same shape. Now, the other thing is, it's a bit of a love-hate relationship. You can either like the design because it may look like an angry roaring tiger, or you may hate it because it looks like a constipated man in pain. Now, the other thing is, right, the chrome itself is a bit of an overload actually, so if you're not a fan of chrome, you might not be a fan of this. Alright, so the next thing we're going to look at would be the lights themselves. It's in a very slitty form. Now, the thing about these lights, apart from them being pure LEDs, they also have an auto on-off feature and manual level adjusting. Now, aside from that, if you notice, the signal lamp is on a separate section of the bumper, which is here, along with a special set of lights in cube form. And, of course, the car is not complete without daytime running lights, DRLs. This car has them too, right here. One here, and another here. Now, the only downside to this is that these DRLs are in a halogen lamp form, which is, in my opinion, absolutely distasteful, because it kind of mars the synchronized image of the white lamps with a pair of halogens. Alright, so moving on to the rims and tires. This Xpander comes standard with a 5-spoke dual-tone rim. Now, I definitely like the designs of the rims. It does give out a very, how would I say, a sporty, vibrant feel. Now, on top of that, these rims are wrapped standard with Toyo Proxess CR1 tires, and their dimensions being 205, 55, 16. That's 16 inches of good solid grips. And as with most cars in this category, the brakes come standard with front disc and rear drums. Alright, now moving on to the side of the car, the first thing you're going to see is that it is actually a generally tall car. I'm 6'5" by height, and this car is actually rather tall. It's not short. The doors are huge. There is, of course, an overload of chrome that's from the start all the way till the back here. And of course, you've got scuff plates on the side skirts. They look trendy to an extent. The door handles are fully chromed. They are keyless entry. The wing mirrors, of course, it's not complete without an auto fold and unfold, which I'm going to demonstrate right now. Currently, it's in a lock mode. Unlock this, automatically unfolds. It's got its little LED light here, of course. You lock it, it locks right, folds back. Right, so moving on to the rear of the car, the first thing we're going to take a look at would be the lamps themselves. They are an L-shaped lamp, one inverted, one not. They are coming in with LED lamps, but of course I do not know why Mitsubishi had to screw this up. They had to put a bulb lamp for brakes, so that kind of made the look incomplete, something like what we spoke about on the front. And of course, above that, you've got the usual windshield wipers, ease of convenience during rain. You have kind of like a spoiler on the top. It seems to be integrated with the roof, so it does give out a very clean look. The third brake lamps for once is out of the car rather than inside, so perhaps some space saving measures. Now, moving downwards a little bit to the less noteworthy section of the car, of course, you've got the standard Mitsubishi logo up in the middle. You've got that big old word that says Xpander, because hey, why not let everyone know you're driving an Xpander, right? And then of course, to add a little bit more grunt to it for people to know, you got to slap on this MyVac badge to say, hey, I'm driving an Xpander that comes with a MyVac. Of course, going all the way down to the bottom, you see you've got those little diffusers over there with a fog lamp, but again, nothing very noteworthy apart from these. All right, boot space isn't very small, but neither is it very impressive. However, to make up for the lack of space, Mitsubishi has of course added some additional boot space in the bottom here. Again, they seem to be cheaping out a little bit on this because you see, yeah, kind of flimsy plastic. And of course, there's a little bit of space on either side for additional storage. Now, the best thing about this boot space is that it can actually be expanded. So let me show you how. Now, with me pulling the seats down, the seats go completely flat and the boot space increases to become 495 liters worth. Now, of course, as an added feature, even the second row seats can be flattened down, and that will then increase the overall space to 1,630 liters. Pretty big to fill in anything you want to put in within reasonable means, of course. All right, so we're going to move on now to the heart of the car, which is the engine itself. Now, this Xpander is powered by a 16-valve dual overhead cam engine, also known as a MyVac engine by Mitsubishi, and it's a 1.5 liter, 105 horsepower with 141 Newton meters of torque. Seemingly sufficient, but we will find that out in truth in a bit. Now, one thing I like about the engines, the bay itself, is that it's very neatly organized, it's clean, easy to work on. Now, moving on to the quality aspects of it, this is where things get a little bit questionable. I do not like these covers. These are plastic crap. They will deteriorate over time. I don't know why everybody's having a craze into these. Now, to prove the point further, take a look at this hose section here. The car is relatively new, yet the hose itself is starting to show signs of wear and it's getting discolored. Now, the other thing I like to touch on about in terms of quality would be like this. The stick that's holding up the engine hood itself. Now, with a car like this where you're paying top dollar, you would at least expect hydraulic boot arms, hood arms in this case, or at least a shorter stick that's, you know, easier to reach, more user-friendly. This one, not really living up to my expectations. Closing it, not an issue at all. One solid thump and boots closed and ready to go. So we are now on the inside of the Xpander. Let's go ahead and see what makes it tick over here. So we're going to start off with the dashboard layout itself. In general, very simple, very practical. It is a multi-LCD screen display, so it shows you the basics, you know, the usual temperature gauge, the petrol gauge is all digitalized, the odometer is all digitalized, and it even has a range meter complete with an Econo bar as well. Now, this Econo bar actually measures if you are driving in an economical state or an uneconomical state. And aside from that, it does have a few features on the steering wheel itself. It is first and foremost leather wrapped, but the leather does not quite feel leather texture, if I may say so. It does come with a piano finish on the bottom, which does feel smooth and nice. You've got your standard controls for calls and for volume, and this car does come with cruise control, which of course you can activate with a push of a button as you are cruising, and you can of course change this accordingly. And moving on to the stocks over here, this is pretty standard. One for the wipers, one for the lights. Okay, so one thing I don't quite get is the placement of these two buttons. They seem to be rather out of place. So the first button you see here, it's an image of a camera, a video recorder. When you press on that, it's basically going to activate your overall 360-degree camera, is how you would say so. And next to it, there's a button that says Info. If you press on this, it basically changes the information on the front here that shows things like, you know, your average fuel economy, your average speed, and your eco mode, of course. But again, these two buttons are really illogically placed, and furthermore, I feel that they are lacking in quality. It feels, you know, cheap. It feels brittle. Not really what I would have expected in a car like this. Of course, you've got your standard start-stop button at the bottom here. You've got the option to adjust your wing mirrors, which is actually pretty easy to adjust. View is decent for a car of this size. And of course, you can decide to fold the mirrors even from the inside. Coming on to the list of features, safety features to be exact. This car has a few. Naming a few of them would be the anti-lock braking system, ABS, the electronic brake force distribution, also known as EBD. You've got brake assist, active stability control, ASC. You've got traction control. You also have a feature that's called the brake override system, BOS. You have hill start assist, and of course you have an all-round monitor, ARM. But on a more layman term basis, we would refer to this as like a camera 360 degree. And on top of that, of course, you do have the two SRS airbags. And yes, disappointingly, we only have 2 airbags in this car. Now, reason why I'm bringing this up, ladies and gentlemen, is because there are other MPVs out there, even local MPVs like the Perodua Arus, that comes with 6 airbags at its lowest variant. 6 guys. So imagine paying a premium on this vehicle that obviously costs more than that, and to only have 2 airbags available. That is not what I want in a car like this. Next, we're going to take a look at the seats themselves. Well, what can I say, guys? The seats are leatherettes. So they're trying to be like real-time leather, but we cannot deny the fact they feel rather cheap, actually. Even when I scratch this, it doesn't give me a very nice feeling, actually. If you are used to sitting in really comfortable leather and then you move on to this, you are going to see and feel the difference. But on the more important aspect, is it comfortable? Yes, it does seat you comfortably. I like the way it hugs. It's not a very huggy seat, but sufficient, so to speak. So moving on to the infotainment, this car does come with a 9-inch touchscreen that also comes with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, thankfully. So all of you Android and iPhone users, rejoice. Unfortunately, guys, this player does not come with an inbuilt navigation system. So if you've got Waze in your phone or Google Maps, having the Android Auto or Apple CarPlay in here is just going to make things easier. That's your navigation right there. Now, moving on to the speakers themselves, this car comes equipped with a total of 6 speakers. There's 1 on each door, and of course 2 little ones on the A-pillars in the front right here. Not very big, but the sound quality is rather decent, crisp, I would say acceptable. Of course, the option for you to do as you please is there in an aftermarket versions. Okay, now for those seated in the back, air conditioning is going to be crucial, because in a car of this size, if you're just having the front ACs, the rate of circulation is going to be a little bit slow and poor. So with that thought in mind, Mitsubishi has in fact added a row of rear air cons. There's 4 panels over here, 4 blowers to be specific. Now, there is an option for the rear passengers to actually control the speed of the fans. There's no temperature setting over here, so the temperature is fully dependent on what it's been set at the front. The quality is, well, once again questionable. It does seem really cheap, guys. Looking at the headroom and legroom, right, as an MPV, we would expect both to be generous. And speaking of the headroom, I can say generous it is. It's pretty big. I'm a tall guy, I can sit comfortably height-wise. However, when it comes to the legroom, assuming that the driver is someone of my height and size, I'm going to have some trouble sitting comfortably at the back, because as you can see, my knee is jamming right up against the driver's seat. However, if the driver is of average height, space clearly is not going to be an issue for me. Of course, we're now going to take a look at how it's like on the front as the driver instead. As a driver, Headroom and legroom is clearly not really an issue because as you can see, I've got more than enough space here and my knees and lower extremities are not jamming up against any of the dashboard surfaces that would have otherwise made it uncomfortable. The most important aspect of the headroom and legroom, the third row of seats. Now with most MPVs, the third row is always, in most cases, tight. Unfortunately, so to say, it is no different with this car. I'm 6 foot 4 inches or almost 6 foot 5. And as you can see, while the headroom is fairly acceptable, I cannot say the same about my legroom. I have practically no space in front. I cannot, for the life of me, recline the seat. The seat is upright and rigid. And as you can see, I am nowhere near comfortable as I was with this row or the front row. This one is simply too tight for me. And in all honesty, unless you're a child or a small-sized adult, the third row seat is not where you would want to be. Alright, so we are now driving the Xpander and the first thing we're going to touch on is going to be the acceleration of the car itself. Now, as you know, this is a 1.5 liter car. It looks pretty underpowered when you hear it because on a body this size, you would expect something larger, right? Well, it doesn't feel really that underpowered. There are some moments where it does, but what I am rather surprised is that Mitsubishi is still using an age-old 4-speed gearbox. I mean, in this time and era, the 4-speed is considered really ancient. I mean, we are at a pace where 5, 6, 7, 8-speed gearboxes are in use, and here we are with a car that is sub 100,000 ringgit using a standard 4-speed. I can't brain that, guys. Now, with a vehicle like this, visibility also needs to be a considering factor. Now, with this car, visibility is clearly not really much of an issue because as you can see, the side view mirrors are big and square, so you get more vision out of either sides of the mirrors. The rear view mirror, on the other hand, I do wish they were a little bit larger. I'm not sure why most car manufacturers have a habit of making them a little small. But one thing that Mitsubishi did do right is to actually shift the position of the side view mirrors out towards the body because it ends up freeing this little space over here. So you end up getting a little bit more vision, and I have to appreciate that. Vision on the rear panel is actually also pretty good. One look behind, I get to see everything I need to. So vision-wise, this is a pass. The next element we're going to look at now is going to be on the ride comfort of the car. So as with any MPV, you're going to be carrying family. So you wouldn't want your family to not ride in comfort, right? So in that department, the car is fairly comfortable. Of course, taking on corners, it does feel at times, a little bit boat-like because it's a big, bulky vehicle, guys. You don't expect it to handle a corner like a sports car would, right? But is it comfortable enough? Yes, it is. It does absorb, holes and uneven patches. It is a little bit on the soft side, the suspension, but in a good way because it ends up taking care of all these uneven roads, holes, patches, you name it, it covers. It does suffer from a little bit of body roll, so it kind of messes with the comfort there a little bit, but I think that's a fairly fair price to pay. I'm going to talk about the handling, guys. So yes, this is a big box, and as you can see as I am going, it pretty much handles like a big box too. It's not very aerodynamic. They are trying their best to make it as aerodynamic as possible, but let's not forget, you can't make a fridge aerodynamic. This is like a miniature fridge. Handles like one. There's definitely body roll as you take the corner like this. Yeah, you see I'm getting a little bit pulled to the side, but it is what you expect from an MPV. You cannot expect the dynamics of a sports car to be incorporated into an MPV, right? Within acceptable means. But again, in a vehicle like this, you don't expect to be driving like a race car. So under normal speed, it's perfectly fine. But if you're expecting to race in this at 140, 160 kilometers per hour, I would advise you not to do it in a vehicle like this. All right, and so we have now come to the end of yet another journey. This time was with the Xpander, and it's now time for me to give my honest feedback on this car. So, in conclusion, guys, my honest review on this, I would rate this car a solid C+. Now, I understand that this may generate some hate, but as a general disclosure and a disclaimer, these views are personal of my own. Now, why I'm giving this a C+ rating is because you are paying top dollar for this car, guys, and yet it is lacking on certain features. I mean, the airbag itself is a good example. You're missing crucial safety elements like additional airbags, whereas other vehicles in similar segments are actually offering, what, 6 airbags? Even the Perodor Arus, it is in the same segment. It costs about 20,000 ringgit less than this, and it's offering 6 airbags, guys. It's also equally as comfy, if not more comfortable. Quality in this car, I'm going to have to say it is rather questionable. It's lacking in certain departments, and as a Japanese brand, you would expect more. But irrespective of that, it is still Malaysia's best-selling non-national car. So what I'm going to advise here on this, before you actually set your dollar down on buying this, go ahead, take a look at your competitors, see what the other models have to offer, and then decide. And if you still go ahead with this, it is your best decision, because when you buy an MPV, you're buying it for family. And when it comes down to family, you want nothing more than to protect them when you are traveling with them. And that protection comes with the features, the safety elements of the car especially. And if you're getting a vehicle that lacks these, you might need to rethink your decisions. With that being said, we have now come to the end of our journey. I will see you again in our next trip. Till then, my name is Greg. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and comment to the channel Shogun Auto House just down here. Until then, see you around.